Welcome to Intermediate Statistics. It is Dr. Catherine Picho Quiroga coming at you with our very fast lab tutorial on descriptive statistics. Now, by the end of this tutorial, you should be able to be familiar with the SPSS interface, as I am going to go over the basic interface of SPSS. You should also know how to obtain descriptive statistics in SPSS, specifically being able to compute and find means and standard deviations, and compute frequencies for your categorical variables. A third objective that we also have is for you to learn how to generate your histograms, because histograms help us gauge how skewed the distributions in our quantitative data are. So when you are looking at your quantitative data, you want to know whether your data approximate a normal distribution or whether they are skewed positively, negatively, or if you have a bimodal distribution. And last but not least, I will be teaching you how to split your data file, which is a really cool data management technique if you want to conduct more sophisticated analysis in terms of breaking down your means and standard deviations for different categories of variables. All right, let's get started. For this tutorial, we will be using the Gardasil dataset. This dataset contains data from young women between the ages of 11 to 26 who went to Johns Hopkins medical institutions between 2006 to 2008 to begin the 3-shot regimen of vaccinations against the HPV virus. So, looking at this portion here, we are currently in our data view. Okay, SPSS has two views. We have a data view and a variable view. In the data view, you can see we have the variables age, age group, race, shots, completed, type of insurance, location, and so on and so forth. Now, attached to these variables are just numbers, because of course, if we're going to analyze data statistically, we need to quantify our data somehow. And in order for you to figure out what these variables mean or how they are coded, basically, you need to be able to go to your variable view. Okay, so you can see that the variables that were in the previous tab are described in greater detail here. So we have labels attached to them. So the variable age is the woman's age in years. Age group would be categories of age. And we know from the data view that age group was coded 1 and it's also coded 0. Okay, so in order for us to figure out what the 1 means and what the zeros are, we have to look at the values that are attached to the label age category. So when we click on that column called values, we can see that an individual was coded 0 if they were between 11 to 17 years old, and the woman was coded 1 if she was between 18 to 16 years old. So I'd always want to encourage you to make sure when you get data sets, you come to the variable view to figure out, what the variables are labeled, and for categorical variables, what these labels mean. Another variable we have is race, and race is coded in the data set 0, 1, 2, 3. So women were coded 0 if they were white, 1 if they were black, 2 if they were Hispanic, and 3 if they reported a race other than the 3 that have been mentioned. So let's take a look back at our data view and look at that category race. We can see that participant 1 is in age group 1, which means she is between 18 and 26 years old. which is true because when we look at age as a continuous variable, we notice that this individual is 21 years old. Race is also coded 0, which means this would be a white female. And then we have another female in the 6th row, 11 years old. So again, age group was coded 0 if you were between 11 to 17. So this makes sense. And race here is coded as 1, which means this would be a young black girl. And then we have this 15-year-old who is Hispanic because race has been coded as 3. So very important to always figure out before you even begin to analyze data. Number 1, the nature of your variables. Are they continuous? Are they categorical? Number 2, how are they coded? How are my categorical variables coded in SPSS or whatever software program you're using? So now that we have that sorted out, I'd like to draw your attention to this area over here, okay? This is the Analyze button, which will essentially constitute all the statistical analysis you could possibly think of. Now that we're done looking at just a little overview of SPSS, we are going to look at how to generate means and standard deviations, which brings me to another focal point of this tutorial. So absolutely all analysis you will be doing for the rest of your statistical lives in SPSS will be found under the Analyze button here. So when I click on that, you get to see you can do power analysis, you can do descriptive statistics, which is where we're going to be. Later on, you get to see that we'll look at repeated measures analysis, mixed models, regression, and so on and so forth. But today we're going to stick to descriptive statistics. The first order of business is to figure out how to generate means and standard deviations. So let's look at I think we only have one continuous variable in this data set, which is age. So we know that if we have a quantitative variable, we are going to report means and standard deviations. So you're going to come to descriptive statistics, and you are going to click on descriptives. You are going to get your quantitative variable that you're interested in getting information for, and you're going to plug it in this box over here. And what you're going to do next is go click on options. It's going to bring up a whole bunch of things that you can, pick, but we know that we want to get means and standard deviations. If you want to get the range, you can, so we can click minimum and maximum as well, just to get a feel for our data, although we do know that these individuals are between the ages of 11 to 26. So we're going to click on that, and then we are going to hit OK. Now SPSS will generate an output for you, which will give you your descriptive data. So our N is the total sample size, and we know that we have 1,413 women in this data set. The minimum age is 11, the maximum age is 26. The average age is 18.6 or 18.55, and the standard deviation is 14.23. So this is how you would get your means and standard deviations for your quantitative variables. Now let's look at how we can get frequencies for our categorical variables. With frequencies, we are going to do the exact same thing, right? We're going to go to descriptives, and this time we are going to click on frequencies. Now let's say we want to see what the age categories were, okay? We know they're 0, 1, but exactly how many young women are below the age of 18. So I'm going to click on that, and then you will click on statistics here. and take a look to see what else you might need. Nothing much here. All you need really is to display your frequency tables. You want to make sure that none of these things is checked, because it does not make sense to calculate mean, median, mode, and sum for your categorical variables. So you just want to check here to make sure nothing has been marked or checked. Okay, and you're only going to, SPSS does this for you automatically. Check this box, display frequency tables, and you can hit OK. So what you'll see here in this output now is your frequencies. For the age group 11 to 17, you've got 701 young women, which translates to 49.6% of the sample. And then for those coded 1, or for the women who are between 18 and 26, we've got 712 of these, okay, which would constitute 50.4% of your sample. Now, sometimes we have missing data, as we can see here, right? Like there's data for one individual missing. So what are we going to do about that specific situation? Nothing really. But what that really means is that when you're reporting frequencies and you've got missing data, you want to report data or results that are in the valid percent column. All right? So when you're reporting this in text, you will say 49.6% of the sample were between 11 to 17 years old. You don't have to say, if you report 49.6% of the sample, you don't need to say 50.4% of the sample was between 18 to 26, because if you've got two categories and you mention the percentage of individuals in the one category, it goes without saying that 100 minus the number you reported will be the percentage of those that you do not mention. So basically, you only want to mention the percent in one category as opposed to both categories when you're writing it in text. However, when you're presenting the information in APA tables, you want to make sure that the information for both groups has been represented in the table. All right. Now let's take a look at how to generate histograms for our quantitative variables. Now we're going to go back to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and even though our variables are quantitative, of course, when we want to get means and standard deviations, we go to descriptives. If we want to get histograms for these variables, we must go to the frequencies section, and we are going to click on charts. So the function to generate charts is located in the frequencies section. Not sure why, but that's the design. So we're going to go and grab age in years, plug it into this variable into this box over here, and then we are only going to click on histograms. And you can say show normal curve on histogram if you want to be able to see the bell curve imposed upon your histogram. Then you're going to hit continue. We do not want to see frequency tables, so we don't have to include that. We're going to uncheck that box because all we want is the histogram. Then we're going to hit OK. And when we do that, we should get a histogram. So to get our histograms, we will go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and we are going to click on Frequencies, simply because the function to give us those charts, so to generate charts, is within the Frequencies section. Not sure why. So we're going to get age, plug it into this variable, this box that says variables. We're going to click on Charts, Histogram, Show Normal Curve, Continue. We don't need to display frequency tables, and we can just hit OK. And voila, we have our histogram here. And it also gives us the mean and standard deviation and the total sample size, which is really nice for us to see as well. So just remember, the only time you're going to the frequencies section when you have quantitative variables is so that you can generate histograms. Okay? All right. Last but not least, we're going to look at how we can split our data. Now, sometimes it might be more informative to see or evaluate certain characteristics of individuals and break down that information by group. For example, you might want to look at the age of individuals, the average age of individuals based on their race. Okay, so we have a categorical variable that we want to split our data by these different groups in order to run means and standard deviations for our quantitative variable. So to do a data split, you have to go to data. This is where all our data management functions are in SPSS, okay? So now you're going to say, I'm going to go to data, and I'm going to go to this function that says split file. I'm going to click on that. The default is to analyze all cases. What this means is that, of course, we are analyzing all 1,413 cases at once when you click for means and standard deviations. But if you want to see the average age by race, then you can say, I want to compare groups. Okay? And it's going to ask you what you want to compare groups by what category. So we're going to say, I want to compare group by race. So SPSS will basically split your file into 4 different categories, as we saw: white, black, Hispanic, and other. And you're going to click OK here. And then now you're just going to go and run your means and standard deviations as usual, right? So you're going to go to descriptives, age in years. You're going to hit OK. And guess what? Now you can see that the means and standard deviations have been provided for every race category. So for white women, we can see that the average age was 18.9 with a standard deviation of 4.336. For black girls, the mean age was 18.1. For Hispanics, the mean age was 17.5. Okay? And then for the group labeled other, their average age was 18.5. So this is really useful when you have, you're more interested in telling more in-depth stories with your descriptive data. You can break down some of these analysis by group. But here's the thing. When you're done with that, don't forget to go back to data to unsplit the file, because if you don't unsplit the file, every other analysis that you do is going to be done by race, which you don't want. Maybe you only wanted to see what the average age was for different categories of race, but not necessarily what the average GPA scores were by race, hypothetically speaking. Okay, so in this case, then you want to make sure that you go back to split file and undo what you did by saying analyze all cases and then hitting OK. And now your data will run like normal, because if I go back to generate just mean scores of age, now you can see it's just giving us the data for everyone. It's giving us means and standard deviations for all women, regardless of their race. So that's it for now. I hope you learned something and will be more comfortable using SPSS moving forward. It's going to get even more exciting as we go along. Please make sure you look through the tutorial and are able to meet the objectives for this tutorial. And if you still have questions after reading the PowerPoint slides and watching the lab tutorials, then feel free to stop by during my office hours. I would prefer that you send me an email so we could make an appointment. That way I can dedicate a specific amount of time to focus just on you. It was nice doing this, and I'll see you in the next video.